Hi, it's Lucy, and today I'm going to be doing my January wrap-up. In the month of January, I read 13 books, which means this wrap-up is going to be really long, and I apologize. If you're concerned about that, all of the books that I will be talking about will be listed down below, along with the timestamps in which I start talking about them. Also in the month of January, I took part in one readathon, the biannual bibliothon, and I did vlog it, kind of. It's not really a vlog, it's just more of me talking, but if you're interested, I will have that video linked down below and somewhere on the screen. And like I said, I have a lot of books to talk about, so let's get into that. I don't know which way I'm pointing. The first book that I finished in the month was Allegedly by Tiffany D. Jackson. This is about a black girl named Mary who allegedly killed a white baby when she was 9 years old. And basically her mother was supposed to be babysitting, and then the baby is found dead. And as a black kid and a white baby, Mary didn't stand a chance. So we follow Mary 6 years after this. She spent 6 years in what she calls baby jail, and she gets out and goes to a group home, and she's been living there for a while. But now she is pregnant and she wants to keep her baby, so Mary has decided she needs to step out and tell the truth of what happened that night. I was super invested in reading this. I really enjoyed the process of reading it. I listened to the audiobook and I was like very invested basically. I feel like the synopsis, like the original book synopsis, makes it seem a little more thrillery than it is, because a lot of the book just focuses on Mary like dealing with the group home and like the judicial system kind of. You get to see how kind of the judicial system, especially you get to see kind of how the judicial system could shape a young bright girl like Mary due to what she's accused of. And the book does focus a lot on how Mary's treated specifically because she was a black child. Without spoilers, I'm not sure how I feel about the ending because of that. A lot of people felt like the ending like cheapened it, and like while it did leave me shook, and I didn't hate the ending by any means, but it was just interesting to see it. I didn't really feel like it cheapened it, but I can see where people got that. But I would still recommend it. I gave it 4 stars. The Lifeboat Clique by Kathy Parks. This follows an unpopular wallflower girl who ends up going to a party that she wasn't invited to, and at the party there ends up being a huge tsunami, which leaves her and 4 of the like popular kids on a life raft, and one of those people happens to be her ex-best friend. This is marketed as sort of an irreverently funny like story because they are about to die, like they witness people die, and because of that it did remind me of Beauty Queens by Liv Bray a little bit, but there were too many times where the book just took itself too seriously, and those parts I felt like is where the book lost me because it just didn't work in this kind of story. Like it's either you're trying to be funny or you're trying to be serious. The author wasn't able to make it work this way, and so we would get like snarky comments from the main character, but then all of a sudden we're getting into this long monologue about how we all need to be nice to each other and all this stuff, and it just didn't work for me. But I was entertained by the parts that were entertaining and like funny, and I just kind of rolled my eyes at like the monologues and stuff like that, so I hit 3.5 stars. I don't know if I would recommend it. If you want like a quick read, then I guess, but like don't go out of your way. The next 2 books I have are part of a series, The Vile Village and The Hostile Hospital by Lemony Snicket. These are books 7 and 8 in A Series of Unfortunate Events series. I was about to say trilogy, but it's not a trilogy. Basically, for all of the books that I've read previously, it's basically the same thing. I enjoyed it mostly for nostalgia. I gave The Vile Village 3.5 stars, and I gave The Hostile Hospital 4 stars because it just had like an extra like creepier element, which I forgot about, and I liked it. And it does like start to deviate from that repetitive nature of the books, so I awarded it for that. The 12 Days of Dash and Lily by Rachel Cohn and David Levithan. This is the sequel to Dash and Lily's Book of Dares, and this takes place a year after the first book, again around Christmas time. In the first book, we follow Dash and Lily after Lily leaves a book of dares in the Strand in Manhattan, and Dash is the person who ends up finding it, and he decides to take up the dares. And so this book follows them a year later, again around Christmas time, and Christmas stuff. It has been years since I read the first book, so that probably didn't help my enjoyment of this book, but I did enjoy it. I gave it 3.5 stars. I thought it was a pretty cute story. I now realize my least favorite trope is miscommunication, which this had, so if you don't like that, know about it. But like I said, it was pretty cute, especially the first like 3 quarters, and the last quarter I was kind of like, is it over? Because I thought it was over, and then like we kept going. So it was a little long, which is a feat, I feel like, for me to feel like it's long because it was like less than 200 pages, so but I don't know if it's me or the book or whatever. But if you just want a cute little Christmassy romance, there's nothing wrong with it. Bad with Money by Gaby Dunn. This is a part memoir, part self-help, part something else, where Gaby Dunn, who runs a podcast of the same name, kind of goes over why people act the way they do about money and like how you can fix the mistakes you've made. I received a review copy from NetGalley in exchange for an honest review, so just wanted to put that out there. I ended up giving this 3 stars. I'm so sad that I didn't love this because I do love Gaby Dunn, or at least I thought I did, but after reading this, I'm not sure. I am planning to do a full video review now that I've read this, similar to my like self-help review video that I did a little while ago, so keep an eye out for that. But for now, I'll just say I didn't realize how much this would deal with like Gaby Dunn's own personal life, so I wasn't a fan of that because I didn't like Gaby's writing style when she's talking about her personal events and stuff. I didn't really understand what she was trying to tell us with those. So if you want more, you can read my Goodreads review. I'll link it down below, or you can wait until I get that video out, which could be a while. So Startup by Doree Shafrir. This is a book where we follow 3 perspectives. One, the CEO of a skyrocketing tech startup, another person who's a mother of 2 and who's an employee at said startup, and then one person who is a just getting started journalist at a writing startup, like a gossipy tech blog. And so we follow those 3 perspectives as they navigate the tech scene in New York and the start of what could be a huge scandal. For me, the book was too short. I felt like this is like 200 pages, I think. Yeah, oh no, it's 300 pages. But I just don't think it dealt with all the things that it was trying to deal with as fully as it could have, and I was disappointed by that. A lot of the issues I have when a book is too short is that I just feel like it could have stayed the same length if it just focused on one thing. Like if we had gotten rid of one of the perspectives, it might have worked. I did enjoy reading this. Like I was invested in the story. It kept me flipping pages. It kept me wanting to know what's going to happen next. There is a trigger warning for sexual harassment. The comments on startup culture that were in here were interesting. I do not work at a startup, and I also no longer live in New York, so I never really saw the tech scene in New York. I do work in tech, so I can kind of see and like know of people who have dealt with stuff like this. Not exactly stuff like this, but like who have dealt with the tech scene. So I think that this had some interesting things. Like it's more pointing out than saying things, but I thought it was interesting still. What I didn't like was the ending. I just thought it was too abrupt. We were building up to this thing the whole book, and then you kind of don't really see any of the fallout. You see like a little bit, but not quite enough. And I felt like it would have been really good to see what had happened after. And so overall, I just felt like this was like a bunch of parts that didn't quite connect. It never got really anywhere. And yeah, but I still had a fun time reading it. Next, we have a very, very popular book. We're talking about The 7 Husbands of Evelyn Hugo by Taylor Jenkins Reid. The synopsis is basically that we follow a journalist who ends up getting called by name by Evelyn Hugo, who's kind of this super famous old Hollywood actress. And the journalist named Monique ends up being called to write Evelyn's tell-all memoir and kind of answer the question of like why Evelyn has had 7 husbands and who is Evelyn Hugo's #1 love of her life, which is like a question that had like been going around the Hollywood circles and everything because she had been married so many times. The whole book is just us listening to the story with a little bit of snippets of Monique's like life when she like goes home and stuff. And yeah, so I ended up giving this 4 stars, which is still a good rating. It's not the 5 stars that everyone else rates it, but I enjoyed it. And this was actually the first book off of my 2019 TBR that I read, and I think it's great that I gave it 4 stars. I was really intrigued by Evelyn's story. I really felt like it kept me reading. It was very detailed. I know a lot of people are like, oh, you feel like Evelyn's like a real person, and while I didn't quite feel that way, it was very detailed, and like you could believe that she was almost a real person. I thought it was so interesting how complex Evelyn's character was. She does do a lot of questionable things, but she's very unapologetic about it, kind of in a way that old people are, you know. Evelyn Hugo is also bisexual and Cuban American, which also plays into the story and how she's received in Hollywood and how she views her life. And so that was an interesting story being told. None of it is own voices as far as I know, but it was still, I thought it was interesting, and I haven't heard anything bad about the rep. My issue, I guess not really issue, but basically Monique, who's a journalist who's supposed to be interviewing her, I feel like it gets way lost in the background, and I didn't really see a point to her having any kind of story. Like I would rather have read just Monique's like memoir like Monique writing the memoir, like just the book itself, instead of like being on the outside, kind of pulling back a lot and seeing like what Monique is up to, what she's dealing with and stuff, because it just wasn't that fleshed out. Like it just wasn't like enough. So next we're going to be talking about a duology. And if you read the title, you know what the duology is. It is Six of Crows and Crooked Kingdom. So basically, I'm going to put Crooked Kingdom down for a second. Basically, Six of Crows is... What the fuck is going on outside? Basically, these two stories take place in the Grisha world. They take place after the events of the first Grisha trilogy with all new characters. We follow Kaz Brecker, who is a criminal prodigy, and he puts together a team of 5 more people to take on the heist of a lifetime with the reward of a lifetime. And then Crooked Kingdom just follows the fallout after the heist, you know? So to talk about them together, I liked Six of Crows. I loved Crooked Kingdom. I felt like Six of Crows was... like, it is the first book in the duology, so it had, like, to do a lot. Like, it had to set up kind of, like, the world. Like, we're in a new city in Ketterdam, so it has to kind of set up, like, the scene of Ketterdam. We visit a lot of new places, actually, but mostly in Ketterdam. And it lays the groundwork for the characters so you can really get to know them. But I felt like the first half of this book was pretty slow, and so I wasn't super invested until the second half, and then the second half I thought was really good. Meanwhile, I thought that Crooked Kingdom didn't have any of that pacing issue of being like super slow. I felt like it was like action-packed at all the places. It had like more like hills and valleys, whereas Six of Crows was just like a valley the whole time and then shot up. I don't know if that made sense, but yeah, I loved the characters in this book. As everyone says, this duology is all about the characters. The heist is cool and it was interesting to me, like, but you really, really fall in love with the characters. I talked about it in the vlog, but basically I love Jesper and Inej. I also love Violet. I was a mess when I finished this book. It was a lot. I ended up giving Six of Crows 4 stars and I ended up giving Crooked Kingdom 5 stars. Also, this is a spoiler, so if you don't want to hear this, then you can skip to when I put the book down or just use the timestamp down below to get to the next book. But basically, I just wanted to talk about this because I was so mad. I wished I was vlogging while I was reading this book because I was so mad. But basically, when Jesper goes to kiss Wylan for the first time, this was like a real life reaction of me. Yes! Yes! And then when we find out that it was not Wylan and it was actually Kuwait, I was so mad. I was like screaming on Goodreads. I was so mad. I wish I was vlogging so other people could like see me go through that. Like I was in shambles. I've never like had such a visceral reaction to a ship before. So that's like crazy to me. But yeah, that just goes to show how much I love the characters, how much I'm so invested in what they're doing. I just can't believe how much I ended up loving this duology. Next we have another 5-star book, The Hunger Games by Suzanne Collins. I was rereading this for the Hunger Along hosted by Rhiannon from Crescent Moon Reads. This is actually my 3rd reread of The Hunger Games. I feel like you don't need to hear me say the synopsis of The Hunger Games, and because I'm lazy, I'm not going to. So yeah, this is my 3rd reread. I actually upped it from 4 stars to 5 stars after rereading it for the 3rd time. This time reading it, I was just so emotional. I don't know if it was nostalgia or what. Like, I think just like knowing how the whole story is like made me like super emotional to see like all the events in this book play out. I don't know what my review was last time I reread it because when I updated Goodreads, I did it from my phone. And I guess when you use the quick updating of Goodreads, like it doesn't save your old review or whatever. So I lost it. Or maybe I never had one. I don't know. But yeah, I was really annoyed. Like, I don't know what changed exactly because it has been a while since I reread The Hunger Games. I think when the first movie came out is when I reread it, which I don't know when that was, honestly. Yeah, but I really enjoyed my reread. If you haven't reread The Hunger Games, I would recommend it because I had a good time. I mean, it was awful and sad and I cried, but it was like a good time, you know? I really didn't think this through. Tales from My So-Called Adult Life by Beth Evans. This is kind of a memoir type book. In the synopsis or on Goodreads, it like likens it to Hyperbole and a Half, and I think it is similar. That book is definitely more hard-hitting. This was a fun little read. The author talks about her dealing with OCD and anxiety and depression, so trigger warnings for all of that. There are a bunch of fun illustrations and stuff throughout and stuff, which I enjoyed, and it was just like validating to read about someone else experiencing their 20s. My only problem was not with the content, but the actual like formatting of the book. A lot of the time the comics would be placed in like off places. Like, for example, like here, it's in the middle of a paragraph actually, like this one. So like you have to stop reading, read the comic, then try and get back to what the paragraph is saying, because a lot of the time the comic would be like an overarching thought, but it's not like a continuation of the paragraph. That was a little annoying to me, but otherwise it's a cute, fun little book. I gave it 3.5 stars. And the last book that I'm going to talk about in this video is Some Girls Bind by Rory James. This is about a person named Jamie who's figuring out that they're genderqueer, and I received an e-arc of this via NetGalley in exchange for an honest review. So I don't know if this is own voices. I could not find any information about the author, so I don't know. This is a book told in verse. Honestly, this was just kind of boring to me. Since it's told in verse, there's not a lot of room for events or like characterization or anything. So the only thing we know about the character is that they like poetry, okay, and that they are genderqueer. And we don't really learn about side characters or anything. Like, there are side characters, but they don't feel like that fleshed out to me. But I can see how Jamie's characterization or lack thereof could be like helpful for someone who is genderqueer or like trying to figure out what they are, that they could like potentially like self-insert themselves or something like that and that could be validating for someone. That could be an intentional choice because of that, I don't know. But as a reading experience, it wasn't that interesting. I've never read a book about a genderqueer character, so that was interesting to me at least. I ended up giving this 3.5 stars. And if you're interested, I don't see why not read it. It's a very short read. So those are all the books that I read in the month of January. I had to think about what month it is. But yeah, thank you so much for watching. If you liked this video, please be sure to give it a thumbs up. If you have any opinions about any of the books that I mentioned, leave a comment down below and let me know what was your favorite book in January that you read. And if you haven't already, please be sure to subscribe to my channel because I make more videos where I talk about books, and hit the notification bell to be notified every time I post a video. Follow me on my social media. I have Twitter and Goodreads, and I am pretty active on those platforms. So yeah, thank you again for watching. I'll see you in my next video. Bye.